I'm your host, Mark Flower, and we will be praying away the demons with my guest, Brandon Forman, as we discuss facts and misconceptions about demons and spirits. Did you know there's no Hebrew word for hell in the Old Testament? None. The fiery pit of eternal torment that's been scaring kids at summer camp for decades, that came later. In Hebrew, the word is sheol, and it simply meant the grave, the place of the dead. Dark and gloomy? Yes, but not eternal conscious barbecue. Then, in the New Testament, things get a little more colorful. Gehenna, Hades, and the very rare Tartarus make their appearances. But here's the kicker. If you're looking for the exact phrase, eternal conscious torment, you won't find it in the Bible, anywhere. Somewhere along the line, theology, and maybe a little imagination, did some heavy lifting. And what about demons? Well, they're not in the Hebrew Bible either. The word demon comes from the Greek daimon, and originally it didn't mean evil spirit at all. In ancient Greece, a daimon could inspire your poetry or ruin your crops. But it wasn't the horned villain lurking under your bed. It was neutral, more like divine influence than demonic terror. Only later, in texts like Enoch, which, by the way, didn't even make it into most Bibles, did daimons start taking on the dark, sinister vibe we associate with demons today. Ironically, that book helped shape how Christians think about demons, angels, even Satan himself. And yet it's sitting on the theological reject pile. Fast forward to the New Testament. The world is crawling with spirits, at least in the minds of the people living in it. Sickness? Demon. Depression? Demon. Anything weird you can't explain? Might be a demon. Before germ theory, this made sense. But it also means stories like Jesus meeting Legion in the Gospels fit perfectly into a worldview where invisible spirits were behind every problem. Here's where it gets interesting, and honestly a little concerning. Those ideas didn't stay in the first century. They've evolved, sure, but they're still with us today. From exorcisms making a comeback, yes, really, to pastors blaming mental health struggles on oppressive spirits, to politicians calling their opponents demonic or witches to shut down dialogue. It's a slippery slope from ancient superstition to modern headlines, and it raises some big questions. What happens when spiritual language becomes a weapon? And what does that say about how we understand good, evil, and everything in between? That's what we're digging into today. From the origins of hell to the birth of demons, to how these ideas still shape politics, culture, and even healthcare. We're unpacking it all, and I'm thrilled to have Brandon Forman with me for this conversation. While recording this episode, we did run into a few technical difficulties, and the audio cut out, so we had to resort to our second audio recording of this. The audio quality diminishes a little bit, but we were able to keep the recording going just for a little bit longer, although it didn't capture the entire conversation, so it does end a little bit abruptly at the end, but I still hope you enjoy it. So, pull up a chair, and let's dig in. Welcome to Grub and Grace. We are back with Brandon Forman. We're going to be talking about demons, demonology, just the mythology behind it within the Bible, within just like Greek mythology or mythologies around the world. So we're going to be kind of digging into the scary nature and also sometimes the good nature of demons or spirits in the world. So welcome, Brandon. Thank you for coming on again today.
Yeah, Mark, thanks for having me back. I appreciate it.
Yeah.
Excited to get into the subject.
It's a crazy subject. I've learned so much over the last week. My mind's about to explode. I was trying to think of like where to kind of jump off with all this, and maybe we could kind of jump off with talking about how we were introduced to the concept of demons, where we learned it, like how old we were, like all the kind of backstory of our own personal journeys within understanding demons.
Yeah, absolutely. Mm-hmm. So, I mean, for me, again, I grew up baptized Catholic. Grew up in a home that parents with beliefs, but we weren't a every Sunday kind of church-going family. But it was still a presence in my life. And then I a lot of time spent time with my great-grandmother growing up. She would babysit me, and there was many paintings of Christ, crucifixes and whatnot, adorned in the home. A lot of religious symbology presented with her statues, figures, and artwork. And along with that, then, she would tell me of demons. And I felt the way she used the concept of demons, she used it as almost a way to keep me in line of certain things. That whole positive reinforcement versus negative reinforcement, where if we go with biblical figures, positive reinforcement, I would say, you should aim and strive to be more Christ-like. I probably would have preferred my grandmother about that route more. But rather, if you don't do this, the demons are going to get you, and from a young age and being exposed to, Looney Tune cartoons and things like that, my visual of demons were,
like Fantasia.
Yeah. Like a Chernobog from Night on Bald Mountain.
Okay.
You have the big horn. It's usually cliche with a pitchfork, which I think is very inaccurate, I believe. But I had a very, I guess what you could say, stereotypical view of them. And again, as a kid with the most basic thought processes related to these things, the way I looked at it, besides demons being like, the anti-angel, I also looked at it as a kid who grew up liking spooky things, spooky movies. I always thought as demons is a much more intense version of Ghost, where Ghost, it could be considered a lost soul. Maybe it doesn't have full control over what it's doing, where it's going. With demons, I always thought there was more malicious intent behind there, more purpose, some kind of goal. And again, this is me growing up. Then as I've gotten older, my view on the concept has evolved greatly. As my views on many things with religion have evolved, and that includes demons. And that also, I think, what plays a factor in that too is a lot of the media I consume, modern day things. And I'm not just referring to horror either. As you sit here with me in the distance, I'm looking at my Dragon Ball figure collection.
Of course.
And funny enough, this is a recent development that has just happened in the newest Dragon Ball series, but a long time ago, it was the character Piccolo was considered a demon.
Mm-hmm. The green skin, the little tentacle things coming out of his head, yeah.
Then they retconned it and made it that, he's an alien from a certain race. But then it's been retconned again where, he's an alien demon. And then it turns out, and they use the term daemon, and then
I'll get into that too. Yeah, I'm glad you kind of brought that up because it's like a Greek, like original term that they use.
And an interesting thing with the way they're portraying it now is daemons. It's actually more so a, for lack of a better term, race, and it doesn't necessarily mean evil aligned. It's a race, and there's good and bad, like anything else out there, which I find fascinating. Because demon, I think you go and you ask anybody who's familiar with the term, I think 90% of people, I don't think that's an exaggeration, I would say 90 associate it with something evil,
malevolent, that sort of thing.
Mm-hmm. But that's kind of my backdrop on it, and there's so many things I can get into, but I don't want to keep rambling on it. But that's where it all started from a very young age. Pretty much as soon as I learned about angels, I learned about demons.
I'd say my story is very similar. Growing up in the church, you get a lot of that fear base, like you were talking about. My parents would never be like, like the demons are going to get you and instill that fear in me. But it was more just kind of like on a subconscious level, teachings through the Bible at church and like, certain dogmas and biblical teachings, and bringing the idea of hell and the demon world into the fold of, teaching about the Bible through sermons and things of that nature. And so it kind of instills this idea of like, well, I don't want to go to hell, so I'm going to do what I can to not go there. And you kind of grow up with this innate fear. And like I said, subconsciously, you might not be thinking about it. It's just one of those things that's just always in the back of your mind. And then it brings into like revelations and being left behind with like being raptured up and the Christians get pulled into heaven and everyone else that's a non-believer. And there's like this fear of, the Left Behind series, being left behind when the rapture happens. I don't know if you know anything about that. I don't know, growing up in the Catholic church.
Absolutely. Very familiar with, the story of the rapture in general, what's implied to happen, the aftermath that people, what they are on the planet with, what they're dealing with there. Yeah, I'm very familiar with, the rapture for sure.
So that's how I kind of grew up with the church and with demons and the idea of that. But nobody ever went deeper as, demons are bad. The devil is bad. Lucifer and Satan are the exact same thing, and they're the devil, and that's bad. And it was just this very surface level bad, evil.
Broad strokes.
Very broad strokes. And so this last week, like actually looking into it, it was super fascinating because I had no idea of the depth of the stories of the mythology behind these demons and how they weren't actually bad all the time, or maybe there are, gods that are considered, gods, but they're actually very much evil and more demon-like in their mythology. So it's been very interesting kind of learning about all this stuff, and even just learning about like hell and people going into like the Greek words and figuring out like, okay, where did this actually originate from? And it super fascinating. There's been a lot of stuff that's gone over my head, even with some of the mythology, but I took extensive notes, and it's a lot.
See, and you put in the effort to, again, some of those, no pun intended, revelations you've had. Oh, that's humorous. But you put in the effort to see that and see that it's the broad strokes don't quite cover it well enough. And the thing is, a lot of people, whatever their first experience was with a certain subject matter, they'll kind of just accept, a lot of the time they accept it as fact and never look to challenge themselves or find all the truth or all the information behind something. One of the easiest examples I can give of, funny enough, this ties into, mythology, is, I can guarantee you that a good portion of people out there who grew up in Western society, that their view of Zeus and the concept of the gods of Olympus still revolve around the Hercules cartoon, where those gods are portrayed in a more positive light, especially Zeus. When if you actually look into the actual tales of Zeus, Zeus was horrible. Zeus was horrendous of a deity. And it's funny, if you actually go into it and start breaking down the story of Zeus, for example, and the things Zeus has done in those stories, people are shocked. It's like, yeah, it's not the same character you saw in that Disney cartoon.
No, he's campy and goofy. And
yeah.
Not that at all.
No, it gets, not even R-rated, it gets NC-17 rated. Yeah. But so on the opposite end of that, for you to find, I'm looking forward to hearing about it, like cases of, well, not all demons are actually bad per se. I love that. I love hearing that,
Yeah. I should actually give a little content warning for some of the stuff that we may go over. Like I said, I have extensive notes. There might not be enough time to go over everything. There are some of the spirit figures and characters within mythology that do have some content that might be for sensitive viewers might want to turn away. I'll try to give a content warning whenever I get to that kind of stuff, to maybe skip ahead a minute or two. Some of it involves violence towards minors and children, and sexual assault, both on men and women. So there is some kind of very delicate content to get around. So I will just go ahead and say that up front, just so if you're listening that and of course the demon like mythology and just the idea of demons might be a little bit kind of maybe scary, maybe too much of a concept for you to want to listen to right now. So I will let you know that some of this stuff, we will be getting into deep of some of the mythology and some of the ideas and of course some of that more delicate content. So if you are sensitive to that, feel free to find us in the next episode. Otherwise, we can jump in to a little bit more deeper. So I do want to mention about the demons. So you mentioned the word daemon. So daemon is one of the words used. Daimon is the more categorical name from Greek that is more commonly used for the word demon. And demon is actually we're speaking strictly biblically with the Bible, the Catholic, and as well as the Protestant Bible. Demons are a New Testament idea. You will find demons, the word demon, in modern translations of the Old Testament. And that is primarily because of a New Testament word, origin word, New Testament word that originated in Greek. And they took that word and overlaid it onto the Old Testament, where the Old Testament talks more about spirits, and they use the word demon to translate instead in the modern translations. And I'll get into all that too. But I want to kind of first get into the concept of hell, because usually when you think of demons, you think of hell. It turns out there is no Hebrew word for hell because the concept didn't exist in the Old Testament. The word hell is a bad translation from translations such as the King James Version, which is notorious for having concepts like that more prevalent than other translations by a large margin too. It's a bad translation from sheol, so a Hebrew word, which does not actually refer to a conceptual package that indexes the English word hell. The concept of sheol is neither eternal nor conscious, nor torment. However, it is viewed in a sorrowful and negative light as death, typically is in most cultures. So then in the New Testament, we have hell translated primarily from the word Gehenna, which is very commonly you hear that in churches and church spheres.
Could you say that word again?
Gehenna.
Gehenna?
I think that's how you pronounce it. Oh. My pronunciation on all these words might be really bad because I did not learn Greek. I did not learn Hebrew. I did not learn a lot of these older languages.
You know better than me. That's, I just want to make sure that I am visualizing the word correctly too there.
So the word that Jesus mostly used for it was Gehenna. And there are also other terms like Hades and Tartarus. Most people are familiar with Greek mythology and that modern Bibles leave Hades untranslated. Tartarus is only used once in the New Testament.
That is a term I am familiar with.
Yes, 2 Peter 2:4, and is still translated as hell today, even though it is an entirely different concept than the others. So hell is defined by the phrase eternal conscious torment. So that's hell as a whole, as a general statement. It's eternal, it's conscious, and torment. For humans who don't believe in Jesus in this life, so that does not exist in the Bible. So just the definition, the concept of hell is translated as hell in the Bible, I believe. But if you look at the concept of it, eternal conscious torment, that doesn't actually exist if you look at the original Greek or Hebrew. If it did, we would need to see all these ideas coming together in at least one of the concepts of hell in the Bible, which it doesn't. For example, if we see a passage that describes hell as eternal but not conscious, that could imply simply ceasing to exist. If we see hell as only conscious and tormenting, it could be temporary. If we see hell as eternal and conscious, it doesn't mean people are being tormented. If we see hell as eternal conscious torment, but only for fallen angels, it doesn't mean it's intended for humans. So you see, there's a lot of stretching of the concept to actually get to the word hell and actually make it undisputable concept that the translations would use.
Yeah, no, how many layers deep did you just go there to get to that too? Right? That's fascinating.
And like I said, this is like kind of went over my head at first, and then I had to read it multiple times, and this is from a source. But I just liked how they put this whole kind of concept of hell, that that you can't actually get there with any word that's in the Bible. Yeah, there are parts of hell that are described with certain words like Gehenna and Tartarus, but none of those words actually give you an entire concept of what hell traditionally is known as. So I don't know if you have any thoughts of that. I mean, there's a lot of information with just the idea of hell, but
yeah, no, it's So let me ask this initially there then. If you're going over the terms specifically there,
mm-hmm.
and then you're saying hell in itself, New Testament, correct?
Yes, New Testament.
Heaven though,
mm-hmm.
Old Testament still?
Yes, I believe heaven is Old Testament. Don't hold me to it. I'm not a biblical expert or scholar, but
so with the with that information, then what was positioned as the alternative to heaven then? So heaven's where you want to end up. Would you know, and if not, that's fine. I mean, I clearly don't know. Not without pulling it up here on my phone at least. What was implied to be the alternative to heaven then? Where if you don't, to severely downplay it and oversimplify the concept, if you didn't pass muster for heaven, where was it? What was implied that was going to happen to you?
Oh boy, that's a good question.
That's what I'd be curious about. And again, I don't know why I keep coming back to this. I don't know why this is something that's in my mind. And because, I've heard that too, that hell was not meant to be the concept of it was misunderstood, and it's not meant to be this place you go to when you were a bad person in your life. That yes, heaven was mentioned, but hell itself, like being considered that kind of construct, wasn't necessarily true. But I've just always what happens to the in between then, because I feel like, and again, it's showing my ignorance here and coming from Baptist Catholic, but like the concept of limbo as well. I don't think that's widely accepted in like every denomination of Christianity, I believe, correct?
No, I think that might not be strictly a Catholic idea, but I know it's a very popular Catholic idea.
Yeah.
In Protestant Christianity, it's not very popular.
Didn't think so.
No. My best understanding of what your question is that the people of the Old Testament didn't necessarily see going to heaven as, oh man, I feel like people are probably going to tear me apart for this, but I feel like heaven wasn't necessarily a destination that people were. I might have to trim all this out because I feel like I'm just like barking up a tree that I don't know anything about.
We're not claiming to know. That's the point of good conversation. I think when you have the answers off your head, that kills conversation at times because you just immediately know the answer.
Yeah.
But are you saying so heaven wasn't necessarily something that people had in their mind was in the cards?
Well, I would think possibly because, I mean, where does God reside? Obviously, there's a location, so I would assume people would want to be with God after death.
Yes.
But if you look at the words used in the Old Testament, it's more about talking about death, just a locations for death where you just go. It's not a concept of hell and what I was just talking about. I think the concept of going one place to the other was definitely more of the New Testament. I think it's more based in the Greek mythology with the gods in the underworld, going to, I was going to say Hades, but that's an actual character within the mythology. But yeah, the underworld, like it's where the dead and the evil spirits reside. And then there's the concept of the holy place where God and the angels reside. Mm-hmm. So I think that's kind of where a lot of that concept kind of maybe not sprouted, but took form, I guess. I mean, there's definitely more of the concept with, like, let's say the Book of Enoch. So I don't know if you know much about the Book of Enoch, but there's actually a lot of debate as far as when the book was actually written. It's very popular to believe that Enoch was written at least 300 years before the Old Testament was even conceived. And so you get a lot of influence from Enoch in the Old Testament. And Enoch actually talks a lot about the concept of angels coming down to earth. So you get this like heavenly realm and then kind of going down into the underworld as well. So I think a lot of that idea kind of predates even the Old Testament. I didn't actually look of when the origin of that specifically. So that's actually a really good question.
It's, it's just that those are the things I stew over. And then not to change course if there's too much, but, another thing, the way, God was always presented to me was the everything, all powerful, omnipotent, omniscient, all knowing, able to control all. Like, nothing happens without the say of God. And then I was the punk kid when I went to a Christian camp in summer where the youth counselor, I would propose the stereotypical hard question where I would say, okay, can God make a burrito so hot that God itself cannot eat it? And then, like immediately the counselor would say, yes, of course. I was like, okay, but now you're saying God can't eat it. Well, no. Okay. But now you're saying God failed at making something too hot that God can't eat it. I was like, no matter what, God is failing in one scenario or another. It's a logical paradox. And you actually talk to somebody who is well-versed in theology, Christianity and everything, they'll have a more elaborate answer to that. I know for sure. This was just some youth counselor. But, that did make me, I would think then, like with, let's say, the concept of demons that are evil, malicious, or the version a lot of people have of is that demons and Satan are working to, corrupt humans, cause us to sin, doom our souls, rise up against God. To that, I had these thoughts since I was younger. I don't know. It was just, and again, I'm not trying to make a pun. It's just, it started making me think if these phrases do come from something, I'm going to say to play devil's advocate, if, God is all controlling, all powerful, why let demons be a thing? Mm-hmm. Like, my immediate thought is, why is there even a chance for a rising against God or a war? Couldn't it just be a matter of God wills them out of existence? Those are the things I get caught up on too. So I think, so what's the story there? Are they something that's somehow out of, because this too, of hell, the concept of hell, when it is being presented or alluded to, and whatever the term is for whether it's not hell, the implication is, obviously God created hell as well, correct? And that's where, fallen angels were casted into the morning star. Lake of fire. Yeah. Right. It's,
you're referring to Lucifer with the morning star, right?
Yes.
Yeah.
So with this being, I would consider that as God's domain. To me, it's like if I were to create insects that are going to live in my home. Maybe they're not in my immediate home, but they're out on the balcony. And I know they're there. I made them, knowing full well that those insects, and then for this example, I'm thinking of insects that are capable of conscious thought, they are plotting against me. And I could just go out there and swipe them away. They're gone. But instead, I kind of just let them be in their little domain over there and let them continue to plot against me. That's something that's always confused me about the concept of demons. Why is it that it's something that can even have a chance? I alluded to a friend of mine who doesn't celebrate Halloween because they feel that that's giving power potentially to demons. It's a chance for them to influence. And they reference that in other cultures that, and I say other cultures, I mean like regions of the world, mm-hmm. that they actually consider it almost, I think barbaric's too strong of a word, mm-hmm. but ignorant of America to celebrate Halloween and be so loosey-goosey with the concept of the paranormal, ghosts, demons, etc. And then what I posed to her was, well, the way I would look at it is those things, if you want to look at them as malicious entities, they have no chance of winning. So it's not something I concern myself with. So I mean, it's a fascinating concept to me for those reasons I just mentioned.
It's a good question of why demons even exist. Why does God allow it? And it kind of makes me think of the whole question of, bringing it to, let's say, like abortion. You get many people who are very fixated and focused on this idea of abortion and trying to stop it. But then you also get this concept of, okay, so in the Protestant Christian faith, and I'm sure it's very similar in the Catholic faith too, is that if you know Jesus and accept him in your life, but then turn away from him, you are going to hell. That's the idea.
Mm-hmm.
If you, let's say you get this people group out in the middle of the jungle that have never heard of Jesus, the name of Jesus, and of course, because they never heard the name of Jesus, they never accept him in their heart, and they die. Those people who have never had the chance to hear Jesus, they go to heaven. So when you get the idea of an unborn child or a child that dies shortly after birth, they've never had the opportunity to know about Jesus and willingly accept them into their heart. Even a young child doesn't fully understand the concept, even if, there's a lot with that too. So wouldn't it be better in that thought process to kill the unborn children? I honestly don't think that abortion is killing children. My thought process goes deeper on that, but
I can tell you initially, I agree with that. I'm just
thinking the hypocrisy within a lot of these arguments it just seems a little wishy-washy with some of that. But I feel like that kind of goes along with kind of the question of, why do demons even exist in the first place?
Well, correct. And that's, and I'd love to hear your thoughts more about that previous subject more, because I think we see very closely on that one. And this is why I think there's some kind of misinterpretation of demons and hell, whatnot, because it's just hard for me to wrap my concept. And now, granted, this is me going so more so the Christ route. From my view, from my understanding of Old Testament God wasn't necessarily all loving.
He's kind of a vengeful God in the Old Testament many times, isn't he?
Yeah, and that,
contrast to the New Testament, where Jesus' teachings is a very loving God.
Yeah, and with God, it's still you still want to be, it's expressed that you still need to be grateful and gratitude, because literally everything that exists you owe to God. But even a vengeful God, it's just hard for me to wrap my head around the concept of God creating, and I guess this goes into two, though, did God truly give humans free will? Mm-hmm. Or is everything part of some plan? And I mean, I know you've heard this too, like you mentioning, I've heard the baby example given much, but also just, is it really part of a plan that before someone's even born, before they even begin to, formally exist, that they are being born, the soul's becoming a thing to just be doomed to hell? Mm-hmm. That's if you don't believe in, free will. Because otherwise, to me, that implies there are literally souls forming, being created, coming into existence, where they're just doomed to eternal torment because that was the plan for them. And that, that's something that's always been hard for me to wrap my head around or subscribe to. So I personally prefer to believe in the free will route, and anything, let's say, hell as a concept.
That is a common critique with predestination. Yeah, I've heard that many times.
So with free will, I can at least get more behind that with, all right, what is it called? The watchmaker or clockmaker concept of God, where there's the predestination where God, has it. Everything's kind of in a controlled element. It's meant to go this way. Or there's the clockmaker where God laid the foundation, put us out there. And then after that, though, the clock and watch is running itself. And the consequences of your actions are purely your own. God said, you know what? I laid all this foundation for you. Now you choose how you go about it. And if you screw it up, that's on you. I can get behind that more, but I'm always going to be somebody who prefers the idea of free will.
Yeah.
And then, tying all that again back to demons is, the origin of them, of just their existence, period. And you've told me before we met up here today, you're listing some specific demons.
Yes. Yeah.
I'd be curious.
Biblical scholars talking about specific demons.
I'd be curious if the origins of any of those could enlighten me or give me some different thoughts on that. What are some of those names you got there?
Do you want me to go through them right now? And then maybe I can kind of go through the concept of demon and the origin of demons too. So yeah. So the one that you are specifically referring to, his name is Yaldabaoth, or Yaldabaoth, is what I've heard too. That one, so also known as, so has many names, Son of Chaos, Father of Chaos, the God Eater, the Great Architect, Shadow of God, the God of the Old Testament. So he is what is known as the demiurge of the Chaos verse. So, okay. And the main antagonist of the Gnostics. So it's a very heavy concept within Gnosticism. If you know anything about Gnosticism, it's a So Gnosticism was a prominent heretical movement of the second century Christian church, partly of the pre-Christian origin. Gnostic doctrine taught that the world was created and ruled by a lesser divinity, the demiurge, and that Christ was an emissary of the remote supreme divine being. Esoteric knowledge, gnosis, of whom enabled the redemption of human spirit. So it's just a small part of Christianity's history, but it's one of those that has produced a great number of books. The Apocrypha is what it's called. So after the crucifixion and the resurrection of Jesus Christ, there was many sects of Christianity. This is very different from today's denominations in that sects differed on the actual framework of Christianity, and modern denominations differ only on the point of views within a fairly standard framework. So what I've heard is that like the Apocrypha and the Gnostics, they a lot of the books that came out of it, the writings, they were written for a very specific group of people, usually a more elite, well-read group of people. And I think that is one of the things, because it's not very easily digestible for many people. It's definitely not a majority that it was written for, but there are other reasons why the books in the Apocrypha are not included in the traditional Bible, like the Protestant Bible or the Catholic Bible. Some of the concepts included are, of course, this Yalta Be'ath, and then you also get some writings in the writings of Timothy, or the book of Timothy, I forget what it's called, but you get like quotes from Jesus, and it's not like an overall story like the Gospels are, like Matthew, Mark, Luke, and John. It's more of just Jesus's teachings. And then you get the Gospel of Philip, and that one gives the idea that Jesus was actually married to Mary Magdalene.
Okay.
So you get these concepts that don't sit very well with the people who decided on which books are included. There's a whole rabbit hole you could go with that, as far as, like the process behind that and some of the politics with that too. That could be a whole nother conversation. But Gnostics called the Christian deity the one true God. They viewed this God as having a feminine part. So that's another thing that doesn't sit very well with a lot of traditional mainstream Protestant Christians and Catholic Christians, which was the spirit. So that was the feminine part. Furthermore, they believed that Jesus was the celestial offspring who came from the union of the male God and the female spirit to form the Holy Trinity. Mm-hmm. So it's a very different way of kind of thinking about all this, and a lot of people would say that they're heretics. There are also a lot of people that label them as still Christians, and they talk about this whole diverse Christianity as a whole concept of you get this very diverse set of thinking about the Bible and the text. So there's a lot with that. So the name that Gnostics gave the Old Testament God was the demiurge, who was, according to their view, not the good father of the now widely spread Christian faith. Yalda Be'ath is thought to be identical with the demiurge, but Yalda Be'ath is actually seen as under God.
Okay.
So it's not God himself, but he's more of he's known as the shadow of God. So he's more of a malevolent being that is under God. And even though he's seen as a god, he has a lot more characteristics as more demon-like. He's a lot more terrifying and cruel of an entity that embodies the forces of both chaos, order, light, and darkness. So this whole kind of being. Let's see, what are some of the more interesting things about him? And he's also known as an it. It's not a he, it's not a she, it's just an it.
I mean, that's closer to what I think I might have mentioned to you that's how I refer to God a lot with friends. I don't mean to interject. That I had to speak on real quick is I've always referred to God as an it. I can't say always. As a kid, I went with he because that's what you heard all the time. But as I got older, funny enough, some of my friends who are very, let's say old school mainstream Christian. I like the way you put that. They refer to he. When I say to them, and usually my female friends who are strong believers are more apt to take a understanding and liking to what I'm saying, is when when I say it, I was like, I just think that, if you're going to go with the concept of God, and again, God being everything, and I'm also not part of the Spanish language, which I know they gender things, but again, I don't refer to mountains when, these numerous things with a gender as a he or she. I mean, I just think if you're going to have something that is literally everything, responsible for everything, it doesn't have a gender. It's beyond human comprehension. Gender is a concept we came up with. It's a name we applied to, well, now gender and sex are not even the same thing anymore, actually. But it's something we came up with to simplify things.
Well, there are many people that would argue with you on that, especially people that are apologetics and live in this more fundamentalist space within Christianity, of where the Bible is God-breathed, it's inerrant, it's non-fallible. So if you look at it that way, that the Word of God in the Bible is directly from God, written by people. So because it's from God directly, that these gendered terms are set in stone as the Word of God.
I see, coming from that. Okay.
Yeah. So there are people that will argue with that. I see more in line with the way that you're thinking of, that God is a much bigger being. I honestly don't think that the Bible is inerrant and infallible. Now, inerrant, that's kind of a tricky term. You have to kind of ask, okay, what do you mean by inerrant? Does it mean that the people who wrote the Bible have error? Do you think that the Word of God was actually divinely orchestrated from God? I mean, there's a lot of definitions that you can have within the term of inerrant. It's a very general term. So I haven't gotten a straight answer from somebody, but I'm always willing to listen if somebody, wants to, give me their ear, but, or give me their voice. I'll give them my ear. But that's kind of where I stand on that. So there are people out there that would argue on that.
That's fascinating. I like hearing that, again, because I like a good counterpoint. I like it when I can be challenged on a thought process like that. Again, I go back to what you were alluding to there for a little bit, though, of it's a bigger concept, bigger being than something that can just be simply labeled as that, as a, gendered term. My view on it and, things with the Bible is, again, I think the minute man, I don't mean male man, I mean humans, played a part in the creation of the Bible, it lost its ability to be completely 100% accurate, because it's men who, to all my knowledge of Christianity, are flawed. Only perfect being was supposed to be Christ. The minute it was in the hands of more flawed beings, there is going to be misinterpretations and translation errors. And I think there is, where those errors might be, there is room for clarification, and there's room for things to be expanded upon.
No, definitely. Well, if you don't mind, kind of piggybacking off of Yaldabaoth, I kind of want to talk about the concept of demons and the origins of them, as far as, what I came across. So the same is true for demons. So looking back at the concept of hell, where you won't find it in the Hebrew Bible, the Old Testament, mainly because demon is a Greek word and there is no equivalent in the Hebrew language. So demon, originally Greek, is daimon, like you had mentioned previously. And that word really only refers to a kind of divine influence. It's not the word theos, which is in, I forget how to pronounce that one, but you get the point, which means a god or deity. But it's used to refer to the divine influence or power or agency of deities. So divinity might be that. Daemon is usually used in Greek literature to the kind of influence where something might suddenly happen, good or bad. And you would say that a daimon, which is another form of that, which is found as the demon, but devoid of any value judgment. So demon in English is typically thought of as a negative value judgment, like we were talking about, a bad thing, it's evil. But in ancient Greek, it was neutral. So it could be good, could be bad, could be just a spirit. So you could have a demon that made something good happen or a demon that made something bad happen. Basically, it's a nameless, faceless mass of divine influence, which you could also equate to the concept of kind of a muse, somebody's individual divine inspiration or a type of spirit. That's the word daemon. That became what we know as demon today. So the term gets picked up with Greco-Roman period Judaism, primarily in the Enochic and other pseudographic literature like First Jubilees, and some other texts from Greco-Roman period Judaism are the ones that first take this word and use it to render some different Hebrew concepts, but then to develop an idea of evil spirits, and that's what gets picked up in the New Testament. So lots of backstory with the creation of demon and kind of where it came from.
Interesting, though, that right from the get-go, it was intended to be more of a neutral term.
Yeah.
Or at least not indicate. I don't even know if neutral is the right word. Just not. It wasn't indicative of a alignment of any sorts. Mm-hmm. And again, it's kind of like I was saying before. Man, it's interesting just to see how that over time has evolved. Continue. I apologize.
No, I was actually. If you wanted to give through your thoughts on that, but I can continue. So, in Mesopotamia and the Akkadian language, there are concepts of malevolent spirits and divine entities. So how they organize their understanding of the divine world, you must first have to understand the concept of center of periphery. So I don't know if you've heard that term before. Mm-mm. So thinking spatially about a civilization, a good example is like a neighborhood, like, today's standards. You have a really nice, the really nice houses positioned in the center of that. So you get the city, you get the really nice houses. Then you get the next outward circle, which is like the condos, and then outward from that, you get the apartments. Then you get the less desirable apartments, and then outward from that, you just get less and less desirable residences and homes and all that. So each concentric ring from outwards in has increasing value and importance to the society, at least according to the people who live in the center. So anciently, the city was the center of the civilization, and the further away from the city you get, the less order there was, which created more disorder. As you get to the outskirts, you get places that are less habitable, and then you get into uninhabitable wilderness, the sea and the desert, which become a kind of prototypical uninhabitable wilderness where humans can't live and certainly can't build an ordered society. Malevolent spirits were thought to occupy these wildernesses. So in Isaiah, you have Lilith. So I don't know if you know anything about Lilith, with like vampire mythology and all that. Also translated as satyrs or wild goats. So this is what I was talking about with, sheep go to heaven, goats go to hell.
Yes.
The cake song, which only occurs in reference to the prophecy about how Jerusalem would become a desolate, uninhabitable wasteland occupied only by the screech owl. So if you actually look up the passages in Isaiah, you'll actually get these terms of screech owl and everything. So going back to ancient Mesopotamia, these wildernesses were always threatening the order of the civilization, so they had to have ways to keep it at bay, and that was different charms and different kinds of magic and spells and whatnot that they would use. So furthering on with that, in Egypt, they made sure to protect their ears, their nose. They were particularly susceptible to orifices for spirits to enter. So this is Egypt. So this is very common concept in Mesopotamia, Egypt, and all that. They needed a physical entry into the body. These spirits are conceptualized as something like wind. So it's something that you can feel but not able to grab, and are able to get into you. So churchgoers may have heard the Hebrew term ruach. So a lot of pastors like to use terms like this, like ruach, and they use these Greek terms. They make whole messages on them. I've heard multiple already. These translate to spirit, but is accurately represented as wind. So these wind spirits are what gets conflated with the Greek concept of daimon with Greco-Roman period Judaism. Residual concepts from Mesopotamia influence from the exile mixed with Persian period concepts, cross-pollinated with some Greek concepts, and then folding in some Hebrew biblical texts. So that's kind of how the concept all kind of comes together of demons. You get all these concepts of different civilizations and their mythology and their stories and ideas of all these kind of things coming together. So a good example of this mixing concept is the Nephilim. So
okay, I'm familiar with that.
Going into this territory of the Nephilim in Genesis 6, where the sons of God come down and they have many children with human women. The foundation of the Enochic tradition is represented and expanded upon to generate this narrative of the children who are giants. And then these giants have children who are the Nephilim, and then the spirits of the deceased Nephilim are the evil spirits that then become the demons. This, of course, is one of the narrative there are many of the origin story of demons in the Bible. So another narrative seen primarily in Jubilees, angels were created on the first day of creation, and they watch the rest of creation unfold. Everything is great until they start descending, and then they get too horny, and that leads to all sorts of bad stuff, like dancing, which is, of course, an evangelical joke at my college. It is joking. Sex leads to dancing. So, and and so because of all this horniness, they fall. Jumping over to Enoch, God tells the good angels, so quote unquote good angels, like Gabriel and Michael, to go bind these fallen angels under the earth for 70 years. They are bound and imprisoned, and that's where we get the development of concepts like hell, which is originally for the naughty, disobedient angels, all those horny angels, just send them right down there.
Those horny angels.
And this idea morphs into the creation of demons.
Fascinating. It's
a long and interesting origin of all this.
See, then it just keeps coming back to flawed beings of any sort, right? Mm-hmm. So is there any version from your research, your personal experience, has there been anything you've found where the concept of a demon is positioned as something, and I don't mean like mainstream public, their interpretation. I mean like, we research the concept of a demon being from the get-go, from the minute it is formed into existence, evil. And I know they can't see me. I'm doing air quotations here with my hands. Evil from the get-go. Because I'm getting a lot of this, something that was originally either neutral, maybe positive, and it's flawed, fallen, and then, that's where you get your demon. But has there ever been a concept of a demon just like right from the get-go, bad news?
Oh boy. I haven't seen anything yet, I don't think, where from the creation of the demon that they are inherently bad or evil. I did a little research as far as like I looked up on Google, how many total demons are in all of mythology in the world throughout history. It spit out a list on Wikipedia of all places. So this might not be the most accurate, but I'm going to go with it. I looked at the entire list, and there were 273 names that it listed. Obviously, I haven't looked through all of them, so there might be some in there, but I haven't come across them yet that I can think of.
Okay.
Yeah.
Something I'll have to put further looking to. Again, I guess it's always been something I've just found fascinating. All this, all the subject matter I find incredibly interesting. I love diving into it and just hearing it from different people from different walks of life, different regions of the world, different cultures, and how like the different interpretations. I think the differences and the similarities can be equally as fascinating. Mm-hmm. Again, I don't want to stray away from the demon talk. It connects. It's just like how I mentioned similarities before people have found a way to easily communicate with each other and across great distances. It's been shown that numerous cultures, belief systems around the world from a very long time ago have a story of a great flood. Mm-hmm. And this is before, collaboration was impossible. There was no way that these different groupings of people from different regions of the world were able to reach out to each other and be like, hey, make sure we're on the same page here. We're all going to tell the story of a great flood. Make sure, it matches up. No, completely distinct, very, vastly separated cultures having very similar stories, which to me will then point to the idea of like, okay, I think something did happen there. There's evidence of it. And then I'm not going to, oh goodness, I can't even think of the correct term of what type of scientist looks at, observes the formation, like, the landmarks, erosions, things like that, that would, if I I don't know the name of that type of scientist, but I do believe that, that might be looked at as like, there's evidence that this place was greatly covered in water in some kind of large flood at some point. So, my point being is with that, you have these different cultures with this very similar story. It is interesting though with demons. Some of the similarities, I say the differences, we've been discussing a lot of differences and different interpretations, but there's still a certain like common ground that's being found across different cultures. And then even if you go away from Christianity, anything adjacent to Christianity, if you go into some of like the pagan cultures and just different like smaller sections of belief systems, there's something similar to demon. Even if it's not called that in concept, it's very similar. Again, I wonder if that's is that a thing of man where we're always so used to the concept of if there is good, there has to be evil. Mm-hmm. Again, I wonder though, how much more neutral is there? How much more
nuance?
Yeah.
And gray space?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Because, so many people think of a lot of these terms in black and white, binary. I have more to say after I kind of go through some of this stuff here on those matters. But I mean, if you want to have an intellectual conversation about this stuff, you have to allow your mind to be open to those gray areas, that nuance, that middle in between area where, it might not be easy for some people to be able to get there, but, how are you even going to have these conversations? How are you going to, engage with even the thought process if you can't even get past that? Just, a black and white world. So.
Yeah, I just don't think anything's ever as simple as completely black and white. I always think there'll be nuance and something as complicated as a subject as this. I mean, I think there's a lot of it there. One thing I wanted to mention here is the concept of the influence, or demons having influence, right? The series I was mentioning earlier that I wanted to bring up.
Yeah.
It's an analog horror that I really enjoy called Mandela Catalog. Mm-hmm. And they give it a summary that doesn't do the series justice in any way, but the most condensed version. This is a series that, again, you can find on YouTube here. It positions that there's these things called alternates that have, through unique methods, found a way to infiltrate in the human society, and they then duplicate humans. The series has gone on for a couple years now, and what their exact purpose or what their goal is has not been completely conveyed. But they're trying to infiltrate. And they go back then to explain of when this all started. They use, and it was actually a real cartoon. I think it was called the Beginner's Bible or Beginner's Guide to the Bible, something similar to that. Old cartoon that told the story of the Bible. And what the creator of the series has done, his name's Alex Kister, he takes the cartoon and he edits it to convey what actually happened. And the whole concept is that when Christ was in the tomb, and also when Gabriel came down, the tell of Christ is coming, Gabriel, something else appeared. And the leading theory is that it's actually, and again, whatever, please guide me here in the correct term, if it was Satan or Lucifer, the devil. And basically, since those times, anybody who has followed basic Christian belief systems have been praying to the wrong thing. And it's been slowly corrupting and infiltrating over, thousands of years. And I thought that was just like such an interesting concept of demons and how they can influence, is literally establishing a religion or belief system that was corrupted from the get-go. Now, again, some people, friends of mine who have strong Christian beliefs, have different feelings on the series. A lot of them can just appreciate the quality of it and the way it's done. Some look at it as and they get offended that the idea of something being able to trick that many people and gain that much influence early on is downplaying the power of good, God, angels, etc. Others, though, also look at it as, this is clearly being painted in a negative light. It's not being positioned that these things, if they are demons, that is the devil, are the good guys in this in any way. Like, they are meant to be an evil force that are meant to be overcome. And a lot of people have theories that later in the series it's going to show the return of Christ or God, like actually becoming involved and trying to put a stop to this. But I just thought it was a fascinating, unique take on the concept of demons where, it's not these horned creatures or anything like that. It's kind of these formless entities that need to take form. And to do so, they're trying to take the form of humans. And some of them come off as imperfect, extended limbs, malformed faces, and things like that. I think it's been interesting the way, you have your purely, like based on the Bible and other historical texts, interpretations of demons, and then you have what kind of pop culture has done with them in recent times. Have you heard of the film Skinamarink?
Maybe. I feel like it sounds familiar.
It got a lot of attention, and funny enough, it stemmed from a YouTuber again who was creating. This YouTuber would take not short stories, I'm sorry.
Is it kind of like the Babadook and the...
Well, he would take short story, people's nightmares, and he made YouTube shorts about them.
Oh, okay.
And one of the shorts he created was called Heck. Mm-hmm. And Heck was about this young boy trapped in this home with what's believed to be his mother. And he can't, like, the doors, the windows, everything in his home starts disappearing. Mm. Like, he can't leave. And his mother cannot communicate with him. And it goes on to show that this boy has been trapped in this situation for dozens of years by the end of it. Well, he then took that film and expanded on the concept and made a film called Skinamarink, where it's a brother and sister trapped in their home, doors, things are disappearing. Some people are theorizing that events early in the movie indicate the young boy got into a terrible accident and he's in like a purgatory type of situation, et cetera, et cetera. But big thing is there's this voice speaking to them, no body, no form, and it's believed to be a demon. And the whole film, it's like, what is this purpose of this demon terrorizing this young child, this young boy and a young girl who haven't done anything, traditionally wrong. I think it's like they're a 5 and 4-year-old or somewhere around that age bracket. And it's like so much more of like almost, at least for an adult watching it, like a psychological torment with no purpose. It's not trying to influence the kids or anything. They are just suffering. And that, like, to me, that's like one of the more malicious versions I've seen of demons. Then you have films like Hereditary by Studio A24, where demon's terrorizing this family. I think that ties a little bit into pagan culture again, too, though. But again, I find that fascinating because, correct me if I'm wrong here, Mark, but isn't it that most like pagan beliefs do not play nicely with Christian beliefs at all, correct?
No.
That's a very big no-no. But still, I think it's interesting that they both have concepts of something similar to a demon.
Yeah.
I just find it interesting that two belief systems that are not meant to really have similarities or anything, there's still this concept of demon. And again, I don't think this is a logical way to think, I think there's a lot of fallacies to what I'm about to say here. So, take it with a grain of salt. But again, I just think there is something when numerous cultures, especially ones that are conflict of each other, have similarities. Mm-hmm. They're just like, okay, there's a root here. There's some kind of root that has like made its way into all of these different belief systems. And I don't know, I want to get to the bottom of that. But if we wouldn't be sitting here just doing this podcast here, we would have a lot more of the answers to the world if we had that answer here. When I'm laying in bed at night and I'm not thinking about work, not thinking about basic maintenance routines for myself, maintaining life, and I get to have a chance to just have some good introspective, deep thought. Yeah, this is the stuff I go to. I've been fascinated by it ever since I was a kid, and that's the kind of thing I think about. Yeah, sorry. Once again, another tangent of mine.
So I'm going to jump into Luke 8, 1 through 3. There's a casual mention of demons being expelled. And I'm going to see if you can kind of catch it.
Okay.
So it goes like this. Soon afterward, he went on, and talking about Jesus, went on through one town and village after another, proclaiming and bringing the good news of the kingdom of God. The 12 were with him, as well as some women who had been cured of evil spirits and infirmities, Mary, called Magdalene, from whom 7 demons had gone out, and Joanna, the wife of Herod's steward Chumesh, and Susanna, and many others who ministered to them out of their own resources. This, of course, is followed by the parable of the sower. It's just a very casual, just kind of, hey, by the way, she was cured of 7 demons. Moving on. So this may have actually been something that the author of Luke was referring to, that the people at the period of time would have been picked up on, but is now lost to us. So just kind of like, hey, here's this person that was done this. They kind of know the connotation of all this stuff, but obviously we don't have enough data and text to give us a more full story behind this whole little paragraph here. But looking at the kind of world and traditions that were common, if the wind blows, it may go up your nose. So going back to this whole concept of the orifices and the spirit of the wind, it may contract a demon. It may just make you sick. It may, if you feel depressed, it might be a demon. So there was a lot that we're attributing to demonic possession, including mental health issues and other pathologies. And these were explanations for things that we now have identified as other things through science and the understanding of the human body. So things like mental health issues and disease didn't have explanations. And before germ theory, there were just spirits and demons. There was a lack of understanding, and you even see this in recent history with how people with special needs were treated, or still today with sexual disgust sensitivity. They don't have enough information for their reflective cognitive to overrule the intuitive side of things. So for the people of the New Testament and their proximity to a demon-haunted world, their internal contamination detection system is going to very easily connect things they're afraid of, things of contamination, or things they just don't understand, as the notion that demons are the culprit. So I kind of want to bring that in with just the demonization of mental health issues and disease and all that. So if you do continue in Luke 8, so verses 26 through 39, as well as Matthew 8, 28, 34, and also Mark 5, 1 through 20. So this is one of those stories that are overlapping amongst three of the Gospels. So there are two men, or according to Luke and Mark, there is just one, who are demon-possessed, and they come out of the tombs. So when there are tombs, this means that they are on the outskirts of the town. So going back to this whole center of periphery idea, the men did not belong in the civilized society. They were out in the outskirts of the wilderness. So when they approached Jesus, they cried out not to torment them. And in Luke, it says that many demons entered the singular man. Jesus commands the unclean spirit, that's a singular spirit, to come out. So the spirit identifies itself as legion, and it says that it is many. And this word legion is capitalized as though it is a proper noun, but the legion identifies as a troop or a multiplicity of demons. Once it says that, it switches over to the neuter nominative, plural, daimonia. The demons are then cast out into the swine, or pigs. These spirits are seen as unclean. Pigs are seen as unclean. So the spirits are drawn to a more natural habitat, which happens to be the wilderness or the periphery. So I kind of want to ask you if you do want to if you have your thoughts on like mental illness and even just women in general, how they're demonized, and everything is attributed to demons if you can't understand it. I'm sure you have some thoughts on that.
Well, of course I do, and that's something that's been going on for a long time. Again, I'm glad you gave a content advisory warning beforehand. It's the things we're talking about, subjects that can challenge some people's views, perspectives on things. Mm-hmm. I hope I convey it as coming from a place of perspective and whatnot. But I say this right now as a heterosexual, white, cisgendered male. I think a lot of individuals who identify the same way as me, since the dawn of man, or since we have developed conscious thought and developed egos, have been afraid of losing their position. I've always felt that. Honestly, and I'm going to tie this in, going back to the concept of me believing God is I've said half jokingly, half sincerely to friends a lot of time, is that the minute man, and this time I literally mean man, male, determine God as a he, and continue that message, that the game was rigged. I think early on, and you need to talk to historians about how the white male found themselves in positions of power relatively early on in human civilization, and then have sought to maintain that position for so long that, and then as religious knowledge, Christian knowledge became more widespread, and then the concept of demons, that when there was something that was either not understood, you can't find a rational reason for it, and men found men period had felt the inadequacy of not being able to explain this away, so therefore it must be demons. I think let's get into spoken language and the way we converse and whatnot. For those who have lived with either mental health challenges, mental handicaps, et cetera, might not communicate the same way. There might be a difficulty there, and to what we now know is not gibberish. It's it could be someone trying to communicate the way they can. It could have been looked at as speaking in evil tongues. I mean, and I'm using this word, I think, correctly, because I mean it with all sincerity. I think it's deplorable. It's deplorable. I try and extend grace to the fact that, maybe it wasn't malicious, and maybe it wasn't a feeling of inadequacy that we can't explain away this, so we're just going to call it demons again. And it's usually most commonly associated with women, again, those who are facing certain challenges, rather than having it being, applied himself, except when it's convenient, where if a man would do something terrible, instead of having ownership over their own actions, I was influenced by a demon. That's then demons are being used as a convenient source to explain away bad behavior. And again, I think that's just incredibly problematic. Again, though, I know a lot of it comes from a place of ignorance. As time goes on, and we learn more about the why behind a lot of things and processes in the world, we get better. Heck, I mean, I'll tell you what my therapist has said to me in regards to autism. Autism for the longest time we know it's said commonly now, it's a very wide spectrum, but people used to have a more narrow view of it and thought that it shows itself this way. Somebody who is living with autism is going to have these certain physical characteristics, these social abilities or lack thereof, et cetera. Now there's so much more. My therapist has mentioned, she's like, Brandon, I think you might have a splash of autism. When I would explain this almost like itch I feel when if something hasn't been cleaned or set in a certain way, or if I lost something I don't need at all. It's inconsequential, but it just bothers me so much I lost it and it's not in its place. I can't continue my day until I find that thing. Some of just, the nuances of that make me. And one of my favorite YouTubers, Jacksepticeye, recently posted a video where he mentions he was diagnosed with autism. And for him, it's incredibly validating because he's like, that does explain some of these things. And it's funny enough, I was watching that video. He's somebody who socializes very well. His whole channel is based on his great communication skills.
Yeah, I've seen his channel before. I really like his content, and I wouldn't have guessed that he would be diagnosed with autism or be on the spectrum.
Yeah, and he was saying some things that I connected with me. One, the video starts off goofy. There's a palpable silence, and he goes, and people know what the video's about because it's at the subject line, Yeah. But he starts off with, so I like trains, and then he goes on, and he's like,
as he normally does, yeah.
Some people in his life are kind of like you, I never would have expected that. And other people are like, well, yeah, no surprise there. Look at the content that you covered and things you post, and some of the things I wasn't aware of though. A lot of people with autism have gastrointestinal issues. I have that. Jack going over how, it seems like I communicate well, and I do. I enjoy people. I have a good time with it. But you have to understand, when I'm having a conversation, this is Jack's words, when I'm having a conversation with somebody, if somebody just lets out the most mild of facial expressions, he's like, I will be overthinking about what they must be thinking or feeling the remainder of the conversation. I am overanalyzing every minute movement of their face, body language. He's like, it's the entire a conversation a person can be like a labyrinth for me that I'm trying to navigate. There's I've been there. And, right there, somebody, you said yourself, somebody that you would not have expected diagnosed with it. And I myself would like to get formally tested. But it's funny, too, as I sit here, I look at, and then in the other room, I have two things here that a lot of people who live with autism tap them like Godzilla. And then my Sonic the Hedgehog little shrine in there. Two fan bases that have a lot of individuals who live with autism. I was like, I think there might be something there. Point being is that, look, we have a greater understanding of autism now. We understand more of the ways it can show up, the way it presents itself. And that's a beautiful thing, because the more we can be understanding, the more that we can help in areas where help is needed. And also realize that it's not necessarily something that always has to be helped either, It's it can be its own beautiful thing. I like getting down to the bottom of things, and I don't like things being overly explained easily or blamed on something such as demons. There's a Simpsons episode like, a woman who knows math, she's possessed. It's again, I find it problematic, and I think it was. I would hope, if I want to give the benefit of the doubt, I would hope it was just sincere ignorance and legitimately what people believed. What I worry is that man was using it to their advantage to control people, paint certain people in a negative light, and they knew what they were doing. That the man did not sincerely believe, oh, this woman, this person is affected by a demon. But I'm going to go with that because it fits my needs. I really hope that's not how that developed, and it came from ignorance instead. But unless I was there, evolving through the times and being a watcher of how men have evolved, I don't have that answer. But it bothers me. Like, long story short, it bothers me that demons have been the thing to blame for these numerous scenarios and situations, and I don't want to say conditions. Just the way that people live and the things they have going on are explained away. It bothers me.
Mm-hmm. No, I'm glad, I feel like I'm learning about you even. Just the idea that you think you might be kind of on that autistic spectrum. It's actually kind of given me a good segue into this next little thing that I want to talk about, was real life examples of some of this demonization and some of the consequences and harm that the concept of demons within the church has brought. Now, this next, I want to say maybe like 3 minutes, does talk about some rhetoric that people use. Talks about exorcisms. So if you are sensitive, if it is kind of a triggering thing for you, I'd say skip ahead maybe like 3 minutes, just to be safe. Otherwise, here we go. Many people think these ideas about demon possession are harmless or just interesting, but some of these ideas can have real life consequences. Just a couple of years ago, Pastor Greg Locke came under heat for making comments that equated mental illnesses, OCD, and autism to demon possession and oppressive spirits. People listen to that, and inevitably some will take that information to heart. Rhetoric, such as don't take your kids to the doctor, they will just pump them full of drugs, so you need to find other spiritual methods to deal with it, like exorcisms, for example. It's apparently it's very damaging. Some of that stuff can be. So apparently exorcisms have actually been on the rise over the last several years. Professor Andrew Chestnut said that the great majority of exorcisms that happen on any given day across the globe are not Catholic, actually. They are Pentecostal. Father Vincent, yeah, that was actually surprising to me too. I knew that exorcisms were happening within the evangelical and Pentecostal space, but I always just thought, okay, exorcism is like a Catholic thing. And I think that's where like Hollywood and movies kind of keep into play, because it's always represented as a Catholic thing. So Father Vincent Lampert told Catholic Answers, it's not just about casting evil out. One has to want to invite God in. The danger, I think, is that exorcists today are being viewed as magicians. An online article, Sisalam.com, said, the growing demand for exorcism seems also to correlate neatly with our modern Western longing for alternative healing and for quick fixes. What if emotional distress could be expelled as decisively as a demon thrown back into the lake of fire? But exorcism, it should be noted, is not some spiritual form of a Ozempic. The people who need... Yes, that's a great quote, right?
That's excellent.
The people who need help aren't getting the proper help they need. It also, oddly, puts the blame on the victim, the person experiencing really difficult things, and they are blamed for it with such phrases as they weren't spiritually fit enough, or they weren't filled with enough of the Spirit of God, and so they allow this demon inside them, and it's their own fault. People have died because of this, or perhaps walked away from this with massive amounts of trauma, and that they will have to unpack for the rest of their lives. And more often than not, it's children who are impacted by this. I also want to say that children and women, but I feel like children, especially with like exorcism in particular, the children and women are very impacted by this. It goes back to earlier that when you don't have enough education for your reflective cognitive to overrule those intuitions, you can actually condition your intuition cognitive to then overrule the reflective cognitive. When you're raised to believe that your unrighteousness allows the influence of demons or a looming fear of hell, it allows for the progress that humanity has made in treating preventable diseases, illnesses, and disabilities to be thrown to the wayside. Of all the bad takes, while COVID at its peak, religious and demonic rhetoric was prevalent. And this is the rhetoric that they use. If there was a spiritual cause, then the only cure available must be spiritual. It's this cycle of cognitive dissonance that the Bible tells me so, and that's where it ends. So in politics, you get a lot of this kind of demonization as well. So we should also address this, that the people like Sean Foyt has had a number of things, and he's just one of many people that have used rhetoric that can be damaging to some people. So Sean Foyt called Trump's indictment, just the whole trial, a demonic situation. Lance Wallnau made a claim that Kamala Harris used witchcraft during a debate. And Wallnau even came out with a podcast episode with two people discussing whether Harris has the Jezebel spirit. So I don't know if you're unfamiliar with the term Jezebel spirit. It's made up of a term that doesn't appear in the Bible anywhere, which is used as a dog whistle for someone who has demonic influence or is seducer, often aimed at women. Honestly, it's a pathetic way to cut off thoughtful discourse as well as framing someone as demonic. This is dehumanizing, and it's a thought-stopping cliche. It reduces everything to a zero-sum binary game where there are good guys and there are bad guys, and there is nothing in between. That is corrosive and a destructive way to look at the world. Honestly, it's, like you said, it's disgusting.
Well, yeah, it halts progress.
Yeah.
Instead of, let's go back to the children example. Instead of having a hard conversation with your child on something, social and motive learning, that you know is going to take work, years of work, money, time, effort, and you can make progress if you put in that time and effort. I'm not saying it's easy. I'm not posturing or coming from a high and mighty place saying, how dare you not choose that hard path for yourself? Until I walk a mile in somebody's shoes, I can't posture. Mm-hmm. But it's a shame when you know that good progress can be made. Or someone goes a different route and says, okay, let's get an exorcist, let's get this done in 30 minutes, problem solved. And then the willful ignorance to, because I'm sorry, but that's not going to do anything. Mm-hmm. Whatever you were hoping the exorcism was going to resolve, it's not going to resolve it. And then from that point on, you either, I guess, just keep going back to the exorcism well and saying, I don't know how they explained it away when it didn't work the first time. New demon, possession, the previous exorcism wasn't done the correct way. It's always explained away. Or you live in willful ignorance and think it did work and just disregard the fact that all the things that you found were challenging are still there. And again, in this example, let's use a child. Instead, from the get-go, you could actually just give that child what they need, tend to their needs, and the more we learn and challenge these hard situations in our lives, like you said, progress can be made. We learn new things, we learn new techniques, we learn new proper diagnoses that we can provide. But when we just keep going back to the exorcism well or anything like that, or blame it on an oversimplified concept, it slows so many things down. And also it takes away the hard work. You mentioning Miss Harris, the fact that she's doing this, you said demonic ritual or witchcraft?
Yeah, so let me read that, let's see it again. So she was, they said that she had the Jezebel spirit. She was, used witchcraft during a debate.
See, when you're willing to blame the opposite side of things they're doing, you disagree with them, it just removes healthy conversation. Once you get demons, then people automatically think evil. Where it's like, this person just has beliefs, views, stances that I disagree with. Instead of digging in on why they think the way they think, I think the way I think, why do we disagree? Maybe there's a common ground somewhere. If you just blame on demons, the conversation just ends. It kills conversation, and nothing productive comes from that. And I've seen on both sides. I've seen left blame certain traits of the right on, it's like demons. Right to the left. It's, I think it's another thing that can just add to the polarization of the country, the world. It's, I yearn and crave a day where we get back to, again, where people have differences, but then when they actually have a human conversation, they realize we're not too far apart. But as long as we're willing to take the easy way out and blame it on something such as this, you're not going to get there. You got to be willing to have hard conversations and put in the work, not seek a quick fix. Closest thing I like to having quick fixes in my life are those command strips that you put on your walls instead of having to screw something in. Like, that's a quick fix I like. It's like, this is easy. The just plop it up, holds a little bit of lightweight, got the keys dangling on there. I like those quick fixes. When it comes to societal issues, interpersonal issues, things that involve people, humans, I don't want a quick fix. You gotta put in the work. We are worth that. We are worth that. And anytime we put our heads together and worked hard at something, we've seen good progress on things.
That's it for today's episode of Grub and Grace. I hope you enjoyed our discussion with Brandon Forman about the myths and facts about demons. I want to give a big thank you to Brandon for joining us on this episode. If you enjoy the content that we produce, be sure to like, subscribe, even leave a review and a 5-star rating on your favorite podcast platform. That would really help the algorithm get us to more people. Thanks again for listening, and until next time, stay curious, keep an open mind, and celebrate the traditions that bring us all together. We also have 3 more episodes about demons and the concept of hell. The first episode asked the question, are demons real? Followed by a conversation with Brian Recker and his new book, Hellbent. And we will wrap this whole thing up talking about specific demons within historical lore and mythology. Let's get spooky. I'll see ya in the next episode.